In this session, we like to talk about just living environments. This day is dedicated to a project called DigiNEB. The very simple starting concept of the project was to bring over digital technologies to the benefit of the new European Bauhaus community. But if you start working on that, you have to think also in reverse. You need to look at the new European Bauhaus community, what they like to achieve, and to see actually what kind of technologies or kind of needs they have. This is not a one-way street. To be precise about the new European Bauhaus, there are several dimensions to it. Of course, the very simple phrase is beautiful, sustainable, and together. A little bit more explicit, that could go about aesthetics, the Green Deal, and inclusion. And I think when we're talking about just environments, probably we're going to talk more about the inclusion side than the Green Deal, but that remains to be seen. Here today, we're talking with four persons. Online we have Francesca Riso from Polymi. We have Diana Poppa from TU Delft. We have Kirsi Mustalachti
Yes.
from the Accessible Arts and Culture organization. And we have Stefan Holmid from Linköping University. Perhaps I should start with myself. I am Frank van der Hoeven from the Delft University of Technology. I live in the Netherlands in a city called Rotterdam. There's a river running through that city. And we know that if you live south of that river, you are expected to live 7 years less healthy than if you live north of the river. And a healthy year that you live is being considered a year without chronic diseases. And the city has been working on that problem already for decades. And it's a very tough one. And perhaps we need new ways of approaching such a problem and new concepts. And when I was talking with Kirsi this morning, the concept of radical inclusion came up. Kirsi, perhaps you can tell a bit more about that.
No, yeah. Radical inclusion for us means that everyone is included from the beginning, from the design phase. And like we have heard the whole week, how important it is that we listen to the needs of what kind of services we are developing, so that we are not doing something that is not necessary. But in this case, came to my mind that if the environment wanted to be designed again, or to design in a better way, how the community has been involved in it. So could there be tools to check out what kind of innovations or needs comes from the community itself? Like Kathy also talked about it, how important it is that everyone is included from the design phase.
Yeah, I see there is a growing interest into that. We are currently in the Netherlands working on things like citizen science, civic engagement, community participation, participatory design. It is a growing field, but it is not easy to put it in practice. Any ideas why that is? What is the hurdle that we face to implement such ideas?
Maybe it's the commitment, so that the community doesn't understand, doesn't have a need to do that, that it's maybe not right way introduce the idea that together we could develop the society and our community better for all of us, or like it's about the information, how it's shared to the community.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe those tools are not, maybe they don't know how to use the tools, how to do it, to give their contribution for the ideas.
Okay. Diana, if I can look to you, from your perspective, just living environments, what is the challenge?
I will make a connection with something that we saw earlier in the presentation and go back in time a bit in the era of Machiavelli and the Prince. So that's quite going some time back. And because I am a part of groups addressing governance of AI, and that is a very interesting and fascinating concept. How do we govern AI? Can AI be governed, and at what level? And as a good leader develops its strategy based on the dual relationship between love and fear. So the good strategy is to make people love you, and the very bad strategy is to make people hate you. And I have seen many examples this week of how people can fall in love with technology and use that technology for social good. That doesn't mean that there aren't any risks within the technology. But it's a dangerous thing to make people fear technology. That doesn't mean that fear shouldn't be addressed by the responsible actor or by the actor that can take on that certain responsibility of addressing also the risks involved with technology. So it's a good strategy to devise, let's say, to divide ways of making technology attractive. Let people fall in love with it, but in the same time have the actors in place that understand the risks and can manage the risks in an ecosystem perspective.
Okay, but most likely you talk now about a democratic society where you can have certain amount of control in a community, but unfortunately the majority of the world is not a democracy.
Indeed.
So I see quite some risk. But perhaps it also does matter that we look a little bit broader than just only the technology, but on the design of a complete strain of services. And I was looking into your work, and you are looking into that. Stefan.
Yes. So first, this inclusion thing, that's super important, of course. So when we think about living environments, if we go back to that kind of setting, our living environment is full of situations where we create value together. And that's basically the basis for thinking about what service is. We create value together. So this is a situation which could be viewed as a service situation if we want to. And so all our lives and all our living, all our lives or all of our livings, so to speak, it actually consists of value creation in different senses. And sometimes we describe that as service, sometimes we describe that as public sector healthcare or whatever, right? But that's those strings and sets of situations that we're in. And the radical inclusion way of thinking, I think, also gives us the possibility to actually see those situations and those networks, or whatever you like to call them, of situations to be connected between people, and we will change. I mean, when this is done, I'll go back to the university and I'll be in another set of actors and people and do in another kind of situation and do other things, right? So there are all these strings and all these tentacles happening all over the place. But then when we think with inclusion, and I think that's super important, any means, method, whatever you like to call it, of inclusion also have mechanisms of exclusion. Mm-hmm. So there is this double kind of nature. It's almost like love and fear, right? It's this double nature of anything we try to do gives us the possibility to be open, to include, but there will always be mechanisms of exclusion. And especially with democratic societies and all other societies, of course, we have these ways of working that are tailored to the people who have been here for quite a long time. So there's an example from when I was working in Helsingborg, where there's a lot of innovations then happening from certain groups of people that have governance literacy, they understand how the system works and they have the contacts, etc. But very little from those that haven't, even though they maybe would be the ones that have the really interesting and could become really good entrepreneurs, for example. So there's this kind of double nature to all of these living environments that are also strings of services that we create.
Yeah.
Can I come?
Yeah, please.
Because this is just what we are doing. We are a small organization and we are developing festivals and seminars. We have 14 member organizations around the world who are developing also their own living environment and their society using culture and art as a tool. And of course, we know that the lack of knowledge is many times making those exclusions. But what is about the radical inclusion still? That our door is open to everyone. It means that despite of your cultural background or your language or your different kind of abilities or special needs, maybe if I can say, you are welcome, and we need to build up safe environment and create tools that you can be creative, that you can do what you want in our small society. So we try to remove the exclusion on that way that we need to open ourselves also to understand different kind of ways of working. Someone is working at night, someone needs to have different kind of tools to make that work happen. But to be really more open, to welcome the different ideas and the different things to that design process, and also for the services.
Okay. The way that the discussion proceeds right now is very interesting. I thought it was focusing on the built environment, and is now especially about how people deal with each other. Francesca, you're looking a bit to this conversation from afar. What do you see happening, and how could you react to that?
Yes. Thank you. And yes, looking at the discussion from Milano, it's quite interesting. So thank you for giving me the chance to listen to all of you. I would like to, if I may, contribute to the discussion by trying to react to the three main, let's say, topics the discussants were bringing in. Well, about participatory or inclusion or radical inclusion, etc. Well, I think that there is, in my experience, there is still a lot of confusion about not only what does it mean, but also how to conduct it. From the perspective of design, we have, let's say, this idea that inclusion means really co-design with those we are in a certain way invading, no? Because working into a living environment means always entering into a context which belongs to others. In this sense, there are also other disciplines, let me say in this way, or other approaches, which are, I would say, less radical, which are misunderstanding the fact that when we say co-design, we really are going beyond the fact that we want to listen to, or to open and to collect the voice, from my perspective, at least in design at the moment, it's much more than this. It's much more about co-production, which means the solutions we are delivering in this context are mainly designed by the people that are, let's say, bringing the problems. And this is because the people are the expert of the problems. While there are other approaches, much more, for example, in the area of democratic society or democracy, and with respect to many ways in which at the moment the issue of democracy is addressed by different European projects, it's very much about techniques to listen to the people and in a certain way, that's it. And this is, for example, among many others, bringing in the issue of inclusion or exclusion in a different way. If you promise people to be included and then you stop as soon as you had 3 round tables or citizen assemblies, you will never get to the point. Yeah. This is, for example, what is happening, just to go to the second discussion about artificial intelligence. It's always about the fact that if you don't give people the capacities to really use, do, and act with these new technologies, which is the perspective of the technologies, they will be always excluded. And as much as we go further with technology, we produce externalities. And externalities are not only about exclusion of people, which is one of the bad effects that we can have when we design a new technology, a new solution. We redesign completely living environments with the idea that listen to the needs is enough, and then we have the solution and we go further. And this is, as I said, happening when we try to apply this idea to designing just living spaces or environments or systems, including services. One of the things we, as a discipline, this is an internal perspective to me, we should try to be careful, is the fact that any times we intervene, we have to be careful about the externalities we produce in the living context where we are working. Just to give you concrete examples, I'm sure that you all know many contexts in your cities across Europe of very depressed areas or neighborhoods which are becoming flourishing because design is entering, because architecture is entering, because of all of these, let's say, regeneration approach, which is always at the basis of the NEB, which is producing exclusion.
Yes.
Not because they want to. They are declaring we want to be inclusive, but that kind of interventions are producing exclusions, and they are bringing off or kicking off the people that are living there in the peripheral areas with this mechanism of, always pushing toward peripheries, and peripheries are becoming distant from the centers where we are living, and we are substituting the people that were there or the communities with those that can pay. Okay. So there is a systemic issue about the economies of this kind of the externalities that we can produce that we should be
Francesca.
To keep an attention. And I will stop it.
Yeah. Okay. The issue that people are being pushed outside and the problems are actually not resolved, but only put to a different place is known, and unfortunately there is also poverty pockets that do not gentrify and do not improve. But I believe that Diana wanted to respond to what say Jessica.
To the two ladies in the conversation, actually, and this idea of radical inclusion. And I will go with the discussion a step in a different direction. from things that I read on AI use, for example, in the military or in law enforcement. And their studies show that decisions made between a live agent and an AI system are better than decisions made just by a human agent or an AI system. So this combination human technology is actually very powerful. But if we look at the law also, cognitive agency in front of the law is only recognized as belonging to a human. So in case of a disputed decision, it will always go back to the human, the responsibility.
Sure.
Even if the combination human technology is best for the decision-making process. So this goes back to the AI literacy discussion. It is good to empower people, but they have to really understand what the limitations and risks of the technology are.
And the responsibility there.
And the responsibility
because they will
gap. Because there is also a responsibility gap to be addressed. And then the question is, who is responsible for sharing or for not sharing, but actually embedding the right knowledge within the system, especially if we talk about areas of less privilege, for example.
Okay, in these areas there is a lot of players. There is housing associations, there is citizens, there is a municipality, there are private parties, and they all have the ability to use AI in a certain way. And they should, I think when we speak here among each other, they all should be included in the process. But who really need the support by us? Who should we empower? Because is that the citizens because it's more difficult for them, or should we inform a municipality how to be more engaging with the citizens? Like, why do we start?
In my perspective, there should be a top-down clear strategy and agenda setting of priorities, and then when you have the right approach, you can start building the bottom up.
Would you agree, Stefan?
I think we both will appear at the same time.
Okay.
I don't think we have a choice. So there will be top-down strategies and there will be a lot of bottom-up stuff happening. And it's governing that will be the difficult thing when we think about how this actually will play out in the end. But I was also thinking about, I mean, one of the issues with, if we think about AI and justness or whatever, is that right now AI, in many senses, it's dysfunctional for the purposes it promises to be there for. So there's an irony about how we believe that AI may help us and support us or whatever, right? So there is this right now a problematic that people that are not the professionals that are using it in teaming, right? But when you try to do this in other settings, well, also in professional settings, actually, you need to adapt to you need to shift your mental model of what it is that you're getting help with, because most of these AI systems are very not intelligent, right? The intelligence is not like you're saying, like, right? In the law, the cognitive capacity lies with the human, and for the reason that we haven't really seen anything else, right? But it's also for, we can keep it like that for a good reason, because those systems that we now call AI systems does not have a lot of cognitive capacity. So that's also a thing here.
Due to this DigiNEB project, I'm playing around with quite a bit of application, and of course you can generate an image for a fuzzy cat with pink hair and holding a microphone. But if you ask generate a housing project in the philosophy of the new European Bauhaus, taking into account sustainability, inclusion and aesthetics, you get something completely horrible, which is completely out of that style. So the really interesting questions we can still not ask. Probably with next iterations we might get there, but at this moment.
So I think probably with other kinds of AI, because those generative AI that we're currently using, they are not good for planning for example, they don't have the cognitive capacity of planning, which means that some of those things that has to do with European Bauhaus together, beautiful, right? It will be very biased, or together it's difficult to envision what that means. If you're just a generative AI, you need to understand planning and inclusion, involvement,
and planning concepts. Yes.
Exactly, to be able to do that, right?
So
right now they don't know that.
So I'm quite curious whether it would be able to understand a concept like radical inclusion. Do you think that would happen? That a tool could help us? Please come up with a sensible strategy for for applying radical inclusion in neighborhood X.
Apua. No, how can we teach the AI to understand the diversity of the human?
We have to feed it with data, most likely.
Yes, with the data.
Yeah.
And we have been talking about the data here a lot,
Yeah.
that it has to be transparent and it has to be exact. But how can we teach AI to understand also that there are mental things, there are things that is not visible, that we are complex and we have plenty of feelings, and I don't know. I really don't know.
You know, Frank, there was, because you said of the democracy and people that are equal, and I will go back to Orwell and what he said, everyone is equal, but some are more equal than others.
Yeah.
So it's also a matter of how equal are we actually?
We're not equal, but we should have equal rights.
Mm.
Yeah. How are we doing with time? Because we're about...
You started a bit late.
Yeah?
So you can go a little bit over the
Okay.
originally planned time. Yes,
Cool.
of course, Francesca has been...
Yep, Francesca. Francesca, my apologies, it's a bit difficult to get you into the conversation because you're behind my back. But please drop in. You are listening to our conversation here. Your thoughts?
Yeah, again, well, I think that even, I mean, focusing on these artificial intelligence development, and we taking the decision and between is better the system of human and artificial intelligence or other configuration, etc. For now, by law, because we have the European regulation, which is the one that is leading our approach to artificial intelligence, it's by law that we gave the control to the humans. While the current developments are also, let's say, open to, of course, other possibilities, and with the quantum, which is coming in the next years, I think that artificial intelligence will also be able to have some capabilities in terms of planning and envisioning futures, because part of this depends on the computational power. The point is, to me again, if we are also speaking about the NEB principles, the kind of new aesthetics that these kind of agents can bring into our life. What does it mean interacting with these agents? Because it can even be positive. I don't see only the negative aspects. They can improve a lot. And the point is still, again, to me, externalities. As much as we increase this kind of technologies, we are de facto including externalities, because there are people that simply are not accessing all the possibility to understand how to interact with these instruments. They don't have the economic capabilities to interact or to deal or to use this kind of instruments. And there are other contradictions, which is quite funny to observe. For example, we are running towards artificial intelligence, not considering the kind of energy we are consuming to run algorithms and artificial intelligence. So there are these big contradictions in all the discussions that we are not only having here, but with respect to the three NEB principles, which are impacting today. The act of design, I think that the act of design to be ethical must really take into account the contradiction and controversy that we can originate.
Stefan wants to respond to you.
No, or add, probably, because it feels like that, right? We're adding together things, right? No, but so because I was going back to this living environments thing, and one of the troubles with AI is that it has no experiences, or ChatGPT, it has a very specific kind of reading experience. But my reading experience, when I sit with my book on the porch in our cottage, looking out over the lake, it's nothing like the reading experience that ChatGPT has, right? So, which also means then that some of these things that we're talking about, the feelings or beautiful, or am I sitting there with my wife or not? All those things goes into that reading experience.
Okay.
And that's a living environment in that sense.
So I understood that here Sweden is good in the technology behind things like Netflix. There is a rating of movies on Netflix, and we should ask AI to start watching movies and try to understand why a series has a better rating than another. How can we give AI that experience that you're describing? Would that be possible? To look outside while reading a book? I mean, I find it very hard to imagine.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I don't think we right now. I mean, I was working with AI in the 90s. That's a long time ago, but right now it doesn't seem as if we will get there, right? And the engines we build, they are like the image producers, right? They're pixel munchers, and ChatGPT is text munching, but text in the sense of ASCII characters in a file, right? And that. And then what I'm speculating, right, what kind of aesthetics, that was what triggered me when Francesca was talking about aesthetics of AI. So what kinds of texts will it produce based on that kind of reading experience? There will be a market for that, right? People will find those kinds of readings interesting and fascinating and intriguing, right? But there will be a certain kind of text that they will, if they were writing novels, there will be certain kinds of texts.
I heard today a distinction between research, innovation, and art fashion. And what strikes me is that I see in the field of fashion already quite some AI images popping up, but not in other fields. So. Yeah, but can you make it? Can you make it? So you can draw it, but can you make it? So that's a challenge.
It starts to sound like a very luxury problem.
Yeah, probably. But I don't think that the whole issue that we started with, the just living environment, is a luxury problem. I gave the example that if your healthy life is being shortened with 7 years because you live in a neighborhood called Bloemhof instead of a neighborhood called Zevenkamp, that's a real issue, and we need to address that. And what I understand from this conversation is that access to networks, communication between people, is probably one of the areas that is really interesting to look in to make further steps into that. Would that be a fair observation? Or I don't want to call it a conclusion.
Social capital has always been a power middle instrument.
Yeah.
So it will stay the same.
So what I observe in my work is that when I was dealing with environmental impact assessments, that people that live in a well-to-do neighborhood, they are very much aware what is happening next to it. If the government decides to plan on a highway, they have the networks to speak with other experts. They know where to find legal support, and they can actively make their voices heard and protest. Well, in poorer neighborhoods, they are not aware, and they not even know that they can object or be heard. So the access to networks that you have for people that can tell you what you cannot and what you can do, understand what kind of facilities we have in place, is really essential, because in principle all these possibilities are there, but people are excluded because they have no idea even. They were never told.
But I mean, knowledge is one part in this, maybe, but it's also then a power issue, and of course also who is making sure that they will understand and can make this happen and get access, or we. So one of the issues here is not that there is one area and another area, but it's the relationship between those areas. It's that we have this it's a double segregation, right?
Yes.
So it's segregated in segregation is not just one of these areas, but it's the fact that we have this relationship between those areas that there is segregation.
Okay.
So it's how can we work with this relationship rather than focusing on only making interventions into one of these areas? Because there will still be the knowledge a divide, maybe. There will still be the power divide, etc. So we need to unperpetuate, what would I like to call it, right? Diverge away from keeping those relations alive that are already then unjust in some sense. So I think focusing on those relationships is much more important than trying to think that we can solve the problem in one of the places, right?
Okay. On that note?
Well, yes, I think this is going to likely continue over lunch. So, except that we wish Francesca was with us.
Yeah.
Francesca, do you have
Thank
one
you
final?
for inviting us.
Sorry, I was just going to say, if you want to say a final word, I don't want to break up without offering you the possibility, because these people here will definitely continue talking.
Well, I think that what Stefan said in the last 30 seconds, try to understand the interactions, the intersections between the different parts of the systems, to understand the different influences, impacts, and I mean, systemically speaking, this is the big issue, how we address the interactions between the component more than solving a problem for one of the specific component. Yeah. This way of working will produce externalities on the other. So the point is how we keep the interactions and be able to support and design for these interactions.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much, Francesca. And I would like to point everybody to the work that Stefan has said quite a bit, but not necessarily strictly about the work that he's doing, which is about just transitions. So please look into their work here at his department's work at here at Linköping University. Sorry, am I supposed to look at over there? Sorry, you see, there's all kinds of directions. Yes, I just want to point you to his work. You have heard a lot from Diana. There are a lot of really fantastic both keynotes and provocations that she has made this week, which you will also be able to see released online, and follow what Kirsi is doing in her work. Is absolutely extraordinary. Work that really enables much larger sections of the population to have meaningful contribution to society. And thank you, of course, very much, Frank, for leading us through this. So it's been a real pleasure to have you all. As I say, conversation continues over lunch. A round of applause for our panelists.
Okay.